Hey guys, this is just a review of integers and order of operations. So this is going to cover assignment 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4, and 1.5. You're welcome to just try the homework, see how far you get, and then come back to this video if you need specific assistance. You're also welcome to print off the notes and just follow along with me for the whole thing. You're welcome to do some of it, go do your homework, whatever works for you, obviously. But welcome. All right, and here we are. Okay, let us begin with the definition of integers, what they mean by the opposite of an integer or a number, and then the absolute value of a number, okay? Opposite and absolute value are not the same. So again, we're talking about integers and the order of operations, or how to do addition, multiplication, subtraction, and division. Good? Okay. So set of integers just means whole numbers, and they can be negative or positive. This dot means they go on forever. So we start at what is called, this will come up later, negative infinity. And then, so this means continuing in that pattern forever. So from 0 to -1 to -2 to -3, obviously we're subtracting 1 each time. So that's going to be -4 is what that dot means, -5, -6 forever. On this side, we're going towards positive infinity. So all whole numbers in the negative direction and the positive direction, and including 0. 0 is not really negative or positive. Okay, so that's what they mean by integers. It's not going to be a decimal. It's not going to be a fraction unless it's a fraction like 4 halves is just 4 divided by 2, which is 2. Okay, so integers are whole numbers. The opposite of a number means you change the sign from positive, these are the positive numbers, to negative, these are the negative numbers, or vice versa, right? But the absolute value is the distance of that number from 0. So if you have a number line, here's 0, here's +3, here's -3. Now, what is the distance between -3 and 0? 1, 2, 3. So when you see the absolute value, it looks like this, and they're just asking how far from 0 is -3. It is 3 units, right? So the absolute value of -3 is 3. The absolute value of +3 is 3, because that's also 3 units away from 0. So absolute value, I want you to think as distance. Okay? It's not just the opposite. So the absolute value of -3 is 3, which is the opposite of -3, but it's because that's 3 away from 0. The absolute value of 3 isn't -3, it's 3 because 3 is still 3 away from 0. Okay? So let's practice. What is the opposite of 2? The opposite of 2 is -2. The opposite of -5 is +5. I was supposed to draw an S, but I wrote a 5. Here, these are not asking for the opposite. This is asking what is the absolute value of -21. So absolute value is these bars, the absolute value bars surrounding a number. Okay, so I mean by absolute value bars. This is not an absolute value, so those are just parentheses, which we will talk about later. Okay, so the absolute value means how far away from 0 on the number line, right? Here's 0, here's -21. If I count between -21 back to 0, I'm going to go 21 units. Good. So the absolute value of -21 is, let me rewrite it. The absolute value of -21 is 21 units. Okay, it's not just the opposite. It's a terrible pen. 21 units from 0. The absolute value of 7, how far is 7 away from 0? 7 units. The absolute value of 0, they're kind of trying to trick you. Not as much as they're trying to trick you for this one. But the absolute value of 0 is, how far away is 0 from 0? It's 0 units away. Now, this has two parts, okay? We have inside the absolute value bars, we have a negative sign, and outside of the absolute value bars, we have a negative sign. So what we're going to do is, and we'll talk about this when we talk about the order of operations, is you want to do the innermost part of the problem first. So we have the part that says negative absolute value negative 12, right? Each of these is a different part. So we can call this one very different from this one, okay? So we're going to do the peach color first. That means we keep the negative that was bright pink. We're going to keep that because this is a two-step problem. We're going to solve the innermost step first, okay? So negative remains a negative, but we know that the absolute value of negative 12 becomes 12, okay? So we've lost the absolute value symbols. It was the absolute value of negative 12, but it has become 12 because that's how you simplify the absolute value of negative 12. And the second step is make that negative, right? That negative sign was a separate operation from the absolute value of negative 12. The absolute value of negative 12 is positive 12, but the negative in front remains in front. So our final answer is, just going to write it again, negative 12. Good? All done. The difference between this negative absolute value of negative 12 and the negative of negative 11 is that these are not absolute value bars. So this is just parentheses. So we're just going to say it's negative 11, and you can still call it separate things, right? That's part of it. This one. And this is part of it. But just the parentheses don't leave you with anything to do, okay? Here, they were absolute value bars, so you can transform it by taking away the absolute value bars and changing it to the absolute value of negative 12. Here, you can't do anything. So instead, we're just going to say the negative of minus 11 is, and if you put it into your calculator, you'll see that subtracting a negative number makes it positive. Two negatives make a positive. You can even look at that and you can say plus, okay? If you are careful, I would encourage you to put stuff like this into your calculator, okay? So minus a negative 11, you can even put it in with the parentheses. So don't start with a minus sign unless you have something in front of the minus sign, okay? Minus 11 is going to pull up whatever you had before, or it's just going to say error, okay? Sorry. Mine always pulls up the other answer, but that's not actually what negative 11 is. So you want to use the negative sign. Negative 11 is 11, or negative, and then you can use the parentheses. Just to be more precise, it'll give you positive. So two negatives side by side, one after the other, makes it a positive. So the negative 11 just becomes 11, okay? And as you guys know, there is an answer sheet at the end. So if you want to work through this alone before you watch the video, that is wise. And you have some help at the end. Negative absolute value of 33. Again, we have two parts. We have the negative part and we have the absolute value part. The absolute value of 33 is 33. So we're going to keep that negative. And then that becomes 33. Right? So this was its own thing. And it became this. But we still have the negative in front. So our final answer here is negative 33. Good. Here we have a whole expression inside the absolute value bars. So again, always do the innermost thing first. So the innermost operation here was the absolute value of -12, and then we went to the negative. Here, the innermost operation is 8 minus 10. 8 minus 10, feel free to put it in your calculator. -2. Keep those absolute value bars. The absolute value of -2 is +2. Good? So just make sure you're going in order, and we will talk about order. Okay? Now, this says a rectangular, so that just means it is a rectangle. A rectangular plot of land measures 80 feet by 160 feet. Find its perimeter and area. Feel free, when you have problems like this, to Google what they mean by perimeter and area. Perimeter is like you're building a fence around it. So you're gonna, here are your sides, A, B, C, D. For the perimeter, you're gonna add area, you're gonna multiply. A and C are the same length because it's a rectangle, so we're just going to say A times B. You can also call A width, and you can call B your length. Or you can call A your length and B your width. It doesn't matter. Good. So perimeter is you're building a fence around the shape. Area is you are finding how many square feet or inches, in this case feet, are within the shape. Okay, so here they said it is, I'm gonna draw it over here. It doesn't want. Not to scale. 80 by 160. What that means is this one's 80, this one's 160. Because it's a rectangle, this one's also going to be 80, and this one's also going to be 160. Okay, so the perimeter is we're adding, so you can call it 80 plus 160 plus 80 plus 160. You can also call it 2 times 80 plus 2 times 160. Whatever you want, okay? And put those into the calculator. It should be the same no matter how you do it. 80, 60, 80, 60. I did one extra 80. So I'm gonna do that. 80, not minus. Stop. 480. Okay. Or 2 times 80 plus 2 times 160 is also 480. Okay. So that's how you do perimeter. Area is you're just going to multiply 80 times 160. 12,800 square feet. You can do it like that. Good. So that'll be a word problem. Feel free to email me if you do not understand a question on the homework or the quizzes. All right, so the rules for multiplying dividing signs is that if you, this is what we started with, right? When you multiply two positive numbers or divide two positive numbers, your answer or your product is always positive. If one of the numbers is negative and one is positive, your answer is always going to be negative. So a negative times a positive always makes a negative. It doesn't matter what order it's in. A negative times a positive always makes a negative. And then a negative times a negative makes a positive, right? That's kind of what we did here. So you can also test it. -6 times -1 is +6. Oh, sorry, you couldn't really see that. -6 times +1 is -6. 6 times -1 is -6. And we know that 6 times 1 when they're both positive is positive. So you can always test it again. But when you're dividing, it should be the same. 6 divided by -1, still negative. 1, -6 divided by +1, still negative. So in sentence form, summarize the previous table. Positive times positive is positive, or divide. Negative times positive is always negative, and then negative times negative is always positive. So if the signs are the same, it's positive. If the signs are different, it's negative. But that's only for multiplication. Or division, different sign, negative. Sorry, I have trouble like talking while I'm writing, so that wasn't great. If your two signs are the same, it's positive. If your two signs are different, the answer is going to be negative when multiplying or dividing, okay? So feel free to use your calculator, but a negative times a negative, we know is going to be a positive, right? A negative times a positive is going to be a negative answer. So you can even say 15 times 9 is 135. So negative 15 times 9 is negative 135. Or you can put it in like that, negative 15 times 9, negative 135. Here we have a negative times a negative times a negative. You are welcome to just do it in pairs. A -2 times a -2 is going to be a +4. And then we're going to multiply that by a negative. Now, a positive times a negative is going to be a negative. 4 times 2 is 8. Or in your calculator, you can just put it in your calculator and it will give you the answer. Put it all in your calculator at once, I mean. All right, again here, we can start with just the first two. 4 times a -1 is a -4. And then we can multiply it by 8, or you can multiply 8 times -5, it doesn't matter. When it's all the same operation, you can do it in any order you want. So 4 times 8, sorry, -4 times 8 is -32. And then we're going to multiply that one by -5. So this was this guy. This is this guy, right? Negative times a negative is going to be a positive. 160. So as you're putting it into your calculator, right, make sure your signs are the same, or make sure you work it out. That's going to be a negative. That's going to be a negative. A negative times a negative is a positive. Make sure it works out sign wise, because that's the easiest, or like the most common mistake to make is to get the right answer, but the wrong sign. So again, here you can start with -6 times -1. Negative times a negative is a +6. And then here we have -5 times -2. -2 times a negative is a positive, and 5 times 2 is 10. So it's just going to be 60. Or you can put it in your calculator. -6 times -1 times -5 times -2. I encourage you to put it in the calculator the way you see it on the screen, because you're just less likely to make mistakes if you just copy it the way that they wrote it out for you. -26 times 10. -26 times 10 is -260 times -4. So this is the same as this one, this way again. So bring down the -4, -260 times -4. Negative times the negative is going to be a positive, so that's 1040. I also should have looked at what my next number was, because anything times 0, what happens? Becomes 0. So it doesn't matter if you're multiplying 4 numbers. If one of the numbers is 0, your answer is always going to be 0, because if we went the other way, 0 times -4 is 0, times 10 is 0, you get the point, times -26 is 0. You're never going to get a different answer. what is the pattern between multiplying and the number of negative signs? So it would be an odd number of negative signs gives negative answer, but an even number of negative signs gives a positive answer, right? Because they're canceling themselves out. You can also just multiply numbers out to determine the sign just to be extra sure if it's an exam or something. All right, here we're talking about exponents, all right? So that's -9, it's kind of hard to see. We're talking about -9 to the power of 2 versus, because they're asking what the difference is, -9 to the power of 2. You're welcome to put it in your calculator. If you keep the parentheses around the -9, it's a positive. If you don't keep the parentheses, your answer is a negative, okay? Because this is asking you, what is -9 times -9 is what that power symbol is, right? But this one is asking you, what is -9 times 9? That 2 is only going to apply to the number, not the sign. It's not going to take into account the sign unless here the 2 has to take into account everything within the parentheses, which happens to be the negative. So here it could ignore the negative because it's not right next to the 2, right? It's only going to count the number. Here it has to account for everything in the parentheses. So -9 times -9 becomes +81, but -9 times 9 is a -81. Got it? Okay. Correctly identify the base, parentheses matter. All right. So -2 to the third means -2 times 2 times 2. The negative is not part of the 2 to the power of 3. -2 to the power of 3. -2 times 2 times 2. One negative sign, 3 2s. Okay. But here we have parentheses. So that means that's going to become -4 times -4 times -4. So that one's going to be a negative. Oh, they're both negatives because they're both done 3 times. So that was -8. -64. Okay. But here we have a positive, or sorry, we have a negative base and an even exponent. So if the exponent is odd, either way, it's going to remain negative, right? Because a negative times a negative becomes a positive, but that positive times a negative becomes a negative again. So here we have -5 4 times. -5 to the 4th, or -5 4 times. Good. This one, we're taking -1 and multiplying it 24 times, but think about what -1 is. -1 times itself is not going to get bigger. It's just going to multiply by itself 24 times. And remember, if it's an odd number of negatives, it gives a negative answer. If it's an even number of negatives, it gives a positive answer. And since 24 means that -1 is being multiplied by itself 24 times, 24 is an even number. So it's going to be a +1. Odd number is going to be a -1. 24 is an even number, so that's just going to be the number 1. -0.8 squared means the 0.8 is multiplied by 0.8. -0.64. Sorry, I forgot the negative sign. Good. There's only one negative sign, and it was outside the parentheses, so it stays. Now, negative 2/3 to the fourth, best to just put it into your calculator. Negative 2/3 to the fourth. We're going to take 2 to the fourth power. Then we're going to take 3 to the fourth power. And it was all negative, right? So 2 to the fourth is that 16. 3 to the fourth is that 81. So it's 16 over 81. And they were negative. So negative 2 to the fourth is positive 16. Negative 3 to the fourth is positive 81. Good. All right. Now we're talking about fractions. Does negative 3/5 equal negative 3 over negative 5? It does not. Okay. Negative 3/5 gives you this. Negative 3 divided by negative 5 gives you a positive of that same answer. Okay. So remember that fractions are just division. So this is negative 3 divided by 5 would give us a negative number, right? Negative divided by positive gives us negative. But negative 3 divided by negative 5 is negative times a negative is a positive. Right? That negative divided by negative gives us a positive answer. Negative divided by positive gives us a negative answer. Did I say that first one right? Negative divided by negative gives us positive. Negative divided by positive gives us negative. Not confident I'm saying that correctly. However, negative 4 over 7 is equal to 4 over negative 7, which is equal to out in the middle 4 divided by 7. All right, you can check it. Negative 4 divided by 7. Positive 4 divided by negative 7, and negative parentheses 4 divided by 7 are all the same negative decimal, okay? So you can have, for 1/2, if it was a negative 1/2, you can call it negative 1 over 2. You can call it 1 over negative 2, or you can call it negative 1/2, okay? And negative 1 divided by negative 2 is the same as positive 1 over 2. Because a negative divided by negative is a positive. Negative 1 divided by negative 2. Negative 1 divided by 2. 1 divided by negative 2. Negative 1 divided by 2. All right. Quotient just means divide. So take negative 27 and divide by 9. A negative divided by positive, we know it's going to be a negative. Negative 27 divided by 9 is negative 3. And it's also negative 27 over 9. Okay, you can turn that into a fraction. Negative 64 divided by negative 8 is negative 64 divided by negative 8. Negative divided by negative makes it a positive, so it's actually just 64 divided by 8, which is 8. But you can check it. Negative 64 divided by negative 8, just to make sure. Okay. 24 divided by negative 4 is also the same as negative 24 over 4, or negative 24 over 4, where it's out in the middle. Okay. 24 divided by negative 4 is negative 6. It's also 24 divided by negative 4, which is negative 6. Good. All right, negative 63 divided by negative 7. 9. Negative 7, sorry, negative times divided by negative is a positive. Negative 73 divided by 0. It's 0 is tricky, okay? You cannot divide by 0. This is undefined or no solution. there's no definition for, if we think about what division is, taking negative 73 of something and dividing it into 0 groups, okay? There's no way to do that. However, you can take 0 groups, or sorry, 0 items and put them into 53 groups, and you'll just have 0 in each of the 53 groups, okay? And test it on your calculator. Negative 73 divided by 0 is an error, and 0 divided by 53 is 0. Okay, so if you can get confused about whether this is no solution or this is no solution, just put it in your calculator. That will help you. Are the sign rules for multiplying and dividing the same as for adding and subtracting? They are not. Okay, so when you multiply or divide, I'm going to do division. A positive divided by a positive is a positive. A negative divided by negative is a positive, but a positive divided by negative is negative, and a negative divided by a positive is negative. Those are the rules, right? Not super clear because it's all one color. But add versus subtract. If the signs are the same, you combine or you add and keep the sign. The answer keeps the sign, okay? Because they're both the same sign. So you just add them like you're doing addition and you'll use the same sign. If the signs are different, you subtract. And then use the sign of the larger integer. The sign of the answer is determined by which one is bigger, okay? So if the signs are the same, add them and keep the sign. So 2 plus 2, those are both positives, right? So we just add them, we get 4, keep the sign the same because those are both positives, the 4 is positive. It was a negative 2 and a negative 2. You combine them, right? And keep the sign the same. So negative 2 plus negative 2 is negative 4, or negative 2 minus 2 is negative 4. So those are the same sign. Good. But if the signs are different, so we have negative 2 plus 5, subtract them, take the bigger number, subtract the smaller number. 5 minus 2 is 3. Keep the sign of the bigger number. Negative 2 plus 5 is the same as 5 minus 2. And then positive 2 minus 5 is that same one, right? 2 minus 5 is 3. So we still took 5 and subtracted 2 and got 3. 5 subtracted 2 and got 3, but this time the 5 is negative, so it's a negative 3. Okay. 3 minus a negative 4. Oh, if a number has a double sign, it's best to rewrite the problem with a single sign before doing anything else. So negative 2 plus negative 2 is the same as negative 2 minus 2. That's what they mean by if it has 2 signs, rewrite it. Just like we did way back at the beginning with, what was the double sign? Ooh, the 11. That's a double sign. Minus a negative becomes a positive, okay? Adding a negative becomes a negative. So 3 minus negative 4, we're just going to call that a big old positive. Minus a negative becomes a positive. 3 minus, 3 minus negative 4 is the same as 3 plus 4. Negative 6 plus negative 2 becomes negative 6 minus 2, just like this was. Plus minus 2 becomes negative 2. So 3 and 4 is 7. Negative 6 minus 2, we're going to combine them. 6 and 2 is 8, but keep the sign, okay? Here we're going to subtract because the signs are different. This one's going to be subtraction. All right, let's look at them more closely. Sorry, rushed ahead there. So we're going to subtract here because we have two different signs, a negative 22 and a positive 11. So we're going to subtract 22 minus 11. is 11, but the 22 is a negative, so it's going to be a negative 11. The bigger number had the negative sign, okay? Let's go jump down to here. This is also a subtraction. So 4/5 plus negative 3/5, I'm going to rewrite as 4/5 minus 3/5, because that's the same. Good. Now, these are different signs, so we're going to subtract. 4/5 minus 3/5 is 1/5, right? And then the 4/5 is the bigger one, and so we're going to keep it positive. Positive, positive, okay? These other two are we're going to add them because they are the same sign. So we have a negative 11 plus a negative 10 becomes negative 11 minus 10, which is negative, or sorry, we're combining them. 11 and 10 is 21, and then they're both negative, so it's a negative 21. 15 minus negative 12. 15, when you have two minuses, we turn them into addition. 15, negative minus a negative 12 becomes a positive 12. 15 and 12, they're the same sign, so we just combine them. 15 and 12 is 27. They're both positive, so the answer is positive. All right, 41, negative 12 plus 4 minus negative 19 plus 5. Minus a negative becomes positive 19 plus 5. You're now welcome to put it into your calculator. Negative, I would just go in order left to right. So negative 12 plus 4, we're going to subtract. 12 minus 4 is 8, but it's a negative 12, so it's a negative 8 plus 19 plus 5. Now, negative 8 plus 19, those are different signs, so we're going to say 19 minus 8 is 11. The 19 is a positive, so the 11 is a positive. 11 plus 5 is 16. Good? Okay. Next one, just change color. 7 plus negative 9 is the same as 7 minus 9 minus 3, and then that minus a negative 9 is plus 9, okay? We'll just simplify it first. 7 minus 9, those are two different signs. That's a positive and a negative, so we're going to say 9 minus 7 is 2. So it's a negative 2. Now we're going to bring down the 3. Negative 2 minus 3, those are the same sign. 2 and 3 is 5, but they're both negative, so it's a negative 5. Now these are different signs. 5, negative 5, and a positive 9. 9 minus 5 is 4. The 9 is positive, so the 4 is positive. Okay? Now, these last examples, we're moving from only multiplication were some of the examples and only addition were some of the other examples. Now we're going to go on to an order of operations with combination of multiplication, division, addition, and subtraction, and these are exponents, okay? So the orders of operation are, you can say PEMDAS, that would be parentheses, exponents, multiply, divide, add, subtract. Okay, there's another way to think about it, GEDMAS. Anyway, parenthesis actually is grouping symbols. So grouping symbols include parentheses, it includes the division bar, it includes radicals, it includes the absolute value bar. Things like that. I can't think of any other ones, but those are some groups, okay? It also brackets if you have like a super number of parentheses like down here. That's a grouping symbol, but that's also a grouping symbol, okay? So GEDMAS is just groups followed by exponents. So do your groups first, then your exponents, and then multiply or divide and multiply. Those are on the same level, okay? So you're just going left to right, add, subtract, left to right. So you can call it GEDMAS or PEMDAS. Groups can be anything that has a bracket, is above the fraction, is inside the parentheses, is under the radical, or is inside the absolute value bars. So here, you want to start with parentheses or the grouping symbols. 5 minus 9. Remember, we're combining 5 and -9. So 9 minus 5 is 4. But the 9 is a negative, so it's a -4 squared times 5. Are we going to multiply or are we going to do the exponent? We're going to exponent before we multiply. So -4 squared. Make sure you use the parentheses. -4 squared is 16. So that's now 5 times 16, which is just going to be 80. And I'm also likely to make a mistake. So make sure you have your answers here. Make sure you check them against my work. Like I can't even tell what that is. So -4 minus 7 times 8. According to this, we need to multiply before we subtract. Okay, so make sure you can even add grouping symbols if you want. 7 times 8 before you subtract 7 from 4. 7 times 8 is 56. So now we have 4 minus 56, because that sign stays the same, okay? 7 times 8 was a positive 56, but the sign stays. 4 minus 56 is just subtracting those two and making the answer the same sign as the bigger part of the equation. Good? All right. 46, 80 divided by -8 times 2. When you have multiply and divide, you don't need to multiply before you divide. You just go left to right, like you're reading a book, okay? Or a sentence. 80 divided by -8 times 2. Those are all multiply or divide, which are on the same level of importance, I guess you could call it. So 80 divided by -8 times 2. You can also call it that, okay? 80 divided by -8 is going to be a -10, because a positive divided by a negative is a negative. 80 divided by 8 is 10, times 2 is -20. Good? All right. Here, remember I said groups include the numerator and the denominator of fractions, which they already kind of like kept them in grouping symbols for you, but this is a grouping symbol. Good? Okay, so 32 minus a -8 divided by -5. That's going to be 32 plus 8 over -5. 32 and 8 become 40 divided by -5. A positive divided by a negative is going to be a negative. 40 divided by 5 is 8. Good? All right, here we have absolute values. So let's decide what the absolute value of 6 is. The absolute value of 6 is 6 plus the absolute value of -6 plus 15. -6 and 15 is just 15 minus 6. Good. So 15 minus 6 is 9. It's the absolute value of +9 over 9. Sorry. Again, remember we want to do all of the numerator and the denominator before we do that last division. All right. Absolute value of 9 is just 9. So we have 6 plus 9 divided by 9. 6 and 9 is 15. So that becomes 15 over 9. Let's see if I did that right. You can simplify that to 5/3. You can divide both 15 and 9 by 3, or you can say 15 is 5 times 3 and 9 is 3 times 3, and then you can, because those are all just multiplication, those are all factors, you can just cancel out one of the sets of fractions, or sorry, factors. Okay, might need more space for this one. This one is 7, sorry, the absolute value of 7 minus 5 times -1. The absolute value of, or sorry, no, these aren't the absolute value. 14 minus 20. So these are not absolute value symbols. I thought this was gonna be really hard. Those are just brackets. All right. So remember, this is a group and this is a group, but they already put them in brackets, so you don't need to think about that. 7 minus, I'm going to do multiplication and division before adding and subtracting. So 7 minus 5 times 1, or -5 times with -1 is +5. And then 14 minus 20. I don't know why the 20 is in parentheses. 14 minus 20, those are different signs. So 20 minus 14 is 6, and the 20 was a negative, so it's a -6. 7 and 5 is 12, maybe. 12 divided by -6. A positive divided by negative is going to be a negative, and 12 divided by 6 is 2. -2. Good. Our next one was 50 times, 12 minus 9 minus 18. Turned into a bracket, so I started with a bracket by accident. Divided by 3 squared minus 3. Again, you want to do everything in the numerator and everything in the denominator before finally changing the fraction by simplifying it or dividing it all the way up. Okay, let's start with on the top, we have parentheses, 50 times 12 minus 9. When you subtract 9 from 12, you get 3, right? Yeah. Minus 18 over 3 squared minus 3. So this is a totally different part, so you can start solving it. I'm going to do the exponent before the subtraction. So 3 squared is 9. Here we multiply before we subtract. So 50 times 3 is 150 minus 18. And then 9 minus 3 is 6. 150 minus 18, I don't know. Not confident that I know. 132 divided by 6. We get 22. And those were positive divided by positive becomes a positive, remains a positive. Here we have 22 minus 10 minus 4 minus 7 quantity plus 5 minus 7 cubed. Let's do the grouping symbols first. 1 second. All right, this is outside the grouping symbol, so it just stays the same. Here we have 10 minus 4 minus 7, but there's 4 minus 7 is inside a grouping symbol. So 10 minus 4 minus 7 is just 3. Sorry, -3. 7 minus 4 is 3, but the 7 is a negative, so it's a -3. And then here you can do 5 minus 7 because that's its own set of parentheses. So that would be 7 minus 5 is 2, and then the 7's a negative, so it's a -2. 22 minus 10 plus 3 plus -2 cubed. I'm just going to put it in my calculator, or it's just -2 times -2 times -2. 10 plus 3 is 13. Now that's everything inside the brackets, so you don't need the brackets anymore. And then -2 times -2 is a +4 times -2 is a -8. So it's 22 minus 13 minus 8. Which is just the number 1. 52 is 2 plus 8. And there's a grouping symbol, -4 plus 5 times -7 plus 2. So here that negative needed to stay with the 10 plus 3 is 13. So it becomes a -13. Here there's no negative outside the grouping symbol. There is an 8. So the 8 needs to be multiplied by that group once you simplify the group. Okay. So -7 plus 2 is the innermost parentheses. 7 minus 2 is 5. The 7's a negative, so the 5's going to be a negative. And then there was a 5 outside of it. Sorry, I'm kind of going backwards. We're working within the grouping symbol, so the -7 plus 2 became a -5. Everything else stayed the same. Here we have an addition, but we also have multiplication. So if it's directly outside the parentheses, it means we need to multiply. 5 times -5 is a -25, because a positive times a negative is a negative. That's that plus sign. Good. So that -4 stays the same, the plus stays the same, the 5 times the -5 becomes a -25. So all of that is now that. Good? All right. So 2 plus 8 times -4 plus a -25, we're just gonna call -25. Good? -25 and -4, we're just combining them, we get -29. I keep that grouping symbol because the 8 next to the grouping symbol means we're multiplying the 8 times the -29. -232. So we have 2 plus -232, which is also just 2 minus 232. Those are opposite signs, so we're going to subtract them. 232 minus 2 is just 230, but the 232 is negative, so it's a -230. Okay. And the last one, number 53, is 16 times -1 minus -7 times -9 divided by 2 times -16 divided by -4 minus 4. Good. We're going to do everything on the top separate from everything on the bottom, and then the last thing we do is divide or simplify if possible. Okay, so on top we're just going left to right. 16 times -1 minus -7 times -9. These you can do first. Okay, multiplication before subtraction. So 16 times -1 is a -16. Keep that minus sign. And then -7 times a -9. 63. Yes. So that minus sign is different than the -7 and the -9. So it's minus positive 63 because a negative times a negative becomes a positive, but that's not that negative. Okay. That is that one. That's that. And that's that. Okay. Here we have 2 being multiplied by -16 divided by -4 minus 4. I'm going to do the -4 minus 4 first. -4 minus 4, those are the same sign, so they're combined, so you get 8, right? This one. So -4 minus 4 becomes a -8. And we have -16 divided by that -8. And then all of that multiplied by 2. Okay, just a different way to think about it. So -16 minus 63, those are the same signs. So we have 63 and 16 combined to get -79. So I just added them as if they were both positive and kept the negative sign. -16 minus 63, you're also welcome to do it that way. Okay, now we need to do inside the parentheses. So -16 divided by -8. So we're going to say 2 times -16 divided by -8. We know it's going to be a positive, right? Because a negative divided by a negative is positive. So it's 2 times 2. -79 divided by 2 times 2. 2 times 2 is 4. So we have -79 over 4 for our last one. All right. And that is 1.1 to 1.5 integers and operations. Definitely email me if you have any questions. Thank you.